My daughter-in-law called me cheap and threw the necklace I bought for her daughter at my face. Have you ever had a gift thrown back in your face? Not just rejected, but physically thrown at you? I have, and let me tell you, when it comes from family, that sting cuts deeper than any knife. The necklace hit my cheek before clattering to the floor. My daughter deserves better than your dollar store junk. My daughter-in-law sneered while my own son just stared at his shoes. In that moment, something inside me broke, but something else hardened. Many of us suffer silently when our in-laws create barriers between us and our grandchildren. We swallow our pride. We bite our tongues. We tell ourselves it's worth it just to see those little faces we love so much. I did that for years until I finally decided enough was enough. If you've ever experienced similar disrespect from family, comment, "I understand" below. You're not alone in this. Subscribe to Stories for Her for more real stories of us elders reclaiming our dignity in a world that too often tries to make us invisible. When my son married Eliza 5 years ago, I was cautiously optimistic. The church smelled of lilies and hope that spring afternoon. I remember standing there, dabbing tears with my handkerchief, watching David's face as Eliza walked down the aisle. His eyes held the same wonder they did when he was 7 and saw his first snowfall. I wanted to believe that wonder would extend to me, that this new chapter would bring us closer, not push us further apart. I made Eliza a wedding quilt, spending months on it, stitching their initials and wedding date in the corner with blue thread the color of forget-me-nots. My fingers ached at night from the work, but it was a good ache, the kind that reminds you that love requires effort, that beautiful things take time. When I presented it to her at the rehearsal dinner, she thanked me politely, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I never saw that quilt again. Not on their bed, not in their guest room, nowhere. Young people have different tastes, I told myself, folding away the disappointment like I'd folded so many of David's tiny clothes when he was small. Don't take it personally, Margaret. That became my mantra in those early days. Don't take it personally when she rearranged the flowers I brought. Don't take it personally when she mentioned how her mother would have done things differently. Don't take it personally when the phone calls from my son grew shorter, less frequent. When Lily was born a year later, the world tilted back toward joy. My first grandchild. I was there in the hospital the day she arrived. This tiny pink bundle with her daddy's nose and her mama's chin. The moment I held her, something ancient and powerful moved through me. That grandmother love that feels both familiar and entirely new. I whispered promises against her downy head. I would be her safe harbor, her keeper of secrets, her connection to the past she was too young to know. I live on what most would call a comfortable income. My late husband, Harold, left me financially secure, though not wealthy. Our modest ranch house is paid for. My 10-year-old Buick runs well enough, and I can afford small luxuries without worry. Still, I always set aside something each month for special gifts for Lily. $20 here, $30 there. Not because I had to pinch pennies, but because I believed in thoughtfulness over extravagance. Harold and I had built our life on that principle. Value isn't measured in dollar signs, but in the care behind the giving. In those early days after Lily's birth, things seemed fine. I'd visit weekly, rocking Lily while Eliza napped or took a shower. I'd fold laundry, wash bottles, whatever needed doing. No complaints from me. It was a joy to be useful, to be needed, to watch my granddaughter's eyes follow the movement of my hands as I sang the same lullabies I once sang to her father. For Lily's first birthday, I gave her a music box that played "You Are My Sunshine." It cost $60. Not extravagant, but not cheap either. Worth every penny when I saw her little face light up at the tune. "That's sweet, Margaret," Eliza said. "But it's a bit loud, don't you think? And it might scratch the nursery furniture." The first hairline crack in my heart. So small I barely noticed it. But gradually I noticed changes. The way Eliza would rearrange the kitchen after I'd cooked dinner. How she'd rewash clothes I'd already folded. The subtle sigh when I'd suggest taking Lily to the park. "We have a system, Margaret," she'd say. Always Margaret. Never Mom, or even my first name alone. Always that little bit of distance. Her comments about my gifts became more pointed. For Christmas, when Lily was 2, I knitted her a sweater with little daisies around the collar. It took me weeks with these arthritic fingers of mine. "Oh, handmade," Eliza said with that tight smile of hers. "How traditional." My mother got her that cashmere set from Nordstrom, so soft against her skin. Another crack slightly deeper. By Lily's 3rd birthday, the pattern was clear as day. Eliza constantly compared my presents to her parents' more expensive ones. Mom and Dad got her the entire Disney Princess collection. She'd announced to everyone at the party after Lily opened my gift of a single Ariel doll I'd found on sale. "Your parents are very generous," I'd reply, swallowing my pride. What else could I say? That I'd chosen to put most of my gift budget toward her college fund rather than toys she'd outgrow in months? I noticed Lily's excitement fading whenever her mother disapproved of what I gave her. Children are perceptive that way. Once when she was 4, she actually whispered, "Is it okay if I like Grandma's book, Mommy?" After Eliza had made a face at the collection of fairy tales I'd brought, that broke my heart in two. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't want to cause problems in my son's marriage. Lord knows I'd seen enough mother-in-law horror stories to know I didn't want to be one. So, I smiled and nodded and pretended not to notice when Eliza accidentally left me off the invitation list for Lily's preschool graduation. Or when she scheduled Lily's dance recital during my regular doctor's appointment. "Oh, I completely forgot about your treatment, Margaret. Such a shame you'll miss it." The comments grew more frequent, more cutting, making me feel worthless in my own family. "Did you really wear that to the school concert?" Or, "I suppose retirement gives you plenty of time for bargain hunting?" Each remark another paper cut on my already wounded heart. What hurt most was watching my son change. My David, who used to call me every Sunday without fail, now barely picked up when I called. Always busy with work or just heading out the door. I raised that boy alone after his father passed when he was just 12. Worked 2 jobs to put him through college. And now he couldn't spare 10 minutes to talk to his mother. I remember the night I realized how much had changed. It was after Lily's 5th birthday party, another event where I'd felt like an outsider looking in. I was driving home, the setting sun painting the sky the color of bruises, when a song came on the radio, one of those old ballads Harold and I used to dance to in our kitchen. And suddenly, I was crying so hard I had to pull over. I wasn't crying for the party or the comments or even the way my son had barely spoken to me all day. I was crying for all the invisible ways I'd been erased from my own family story. How I'd become a footnote rather than a chapter. How I'd let it happen one small silence at a time. By the time Lily turned 6, I was seeing her maybe once a month, always with Eliza hovering nearby, monitoring our conversations. "Don't fill her head with those old-fashioned ideas, Margaret," she'd say if I mentioned anything from my own childhood. As if my experiences, my very life, were somehow contaminated goods. I started dreading family gatherings rather than looking forward to them. Would this be the dinner where Eliza pointed out how my pie crust wasn't quite right? The Sunday lunch where she'd mention yet again how her mother took Lily to the American Girl store while I took her to the public library? The endless comparisons, the subtle put-downs wear on a person, especially when you're already feeling the weight of your years. For Lily's 7th birthday, I saved for months to buy a silver heart necklace. Not because I couldn't afford it outright, but because I wanted each dollar set aside to carry intention with it. Each time I transferred money to my Lily fund, I'd think about her smile, about the moment she'd open it. I went to Davidson's Jewelry downtown. Not one of those big chain stores, but the little family place that's been there since I was a girl. Mr. Davidson's son helps run it now. And when I told him it was for my granddaughter, he took extra care helping me choose. "This one has her birthstone," he said, holding up a delicate silver heart with a small aquamarine in the center. "And we can engrave something on the back if you'd like." "Love, Grandma," I said without hesitation. He nodded, understanding the weight those simple words carried. "Your granddaughter will treasure this," he said as he wrapped it in a velvet box with a satin ribbon. I certainly hoped so. The birthday party was at one of those indoor playgrounds with the inflatable bounce houses and slides. Too loud for my taste, but the children seemed to love it. I arrived early with my gift wrapped in the special paper I'd found with ballerinas on it. Lily had just started dance lessons and talked of nothing else. When gift opening time came, I sat nervously watching Lily tear through packages of toys and clothes, most still with price tags attached. Eliza's parents had given her a child-sized vanity with a light-up mirror. "From Nana and Papa," Eliza announced, making sure everyone heard. The other grandparents beamed from across the table. Finally, Lily reached for my smaller package. "This one's from Grandma," she said, carefully pulling the ribbon. When she opened the velvet box, her eyes lit up. A necklace like a grown-up. She held it up, the silver catching the light. "Look, Mommy, it has my special stone." For just a moment, everything was perfect. That look on her face. That's what every grandmother lives for. Then Eliza's hand shot out, snatching it away from Lily's small hands. "Let me see that," she said, her voice sharp as an attack. She examined it, turning it over with a frown deepening on her face. The room had gone quiet, other parents glancing uncomfortably at each other. "This is the cheapest silver I've ever seen. Probably not even real," she sneered, looking directly at me. Not whispering, not aside, right out loud for everyone to hear. "It's real," I said softly. "From Davidson's downtown. That old place," she laughed, a brittle sound. "They probably saw you coming. An old woman easy to fool with some nickel-plated junk." Lily's bottom lip trembled. "But I like it, Mommy." "You don't know any better, sweetie." Then Eliza did something I still see in my nightmares. She tossed the necklace, just threw it across the room like it was trash. It happened so fast. The silver chain arced through the air, caught the party lights, and then it hit me right across my cheek, the clasp catching slightly before the whole thing fell to the floor with a soft tinkle. "My daughter deserves better than your dollar store junk," she said, voice ice cold. Everyone saw 20 sets of eyes, parents, children, the teenage party attendants, all witnessed my humiliation. Worst of all was my son standing behind his wife, staring at his shoes as if the answer to life's mysteries could be found in his loafers. In that moment, something inside me broke, and something else hardened. The sting on my cheek was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. I'd been embarrassed before, had my feelings hurt plenty of times in my 68 years, but never like this. Never so publicly, so deliberately. I bent down slowly, my knees protesting as they always do, and picked up the necklace from the sticky party room floor. The chain had broken where it hit my face. Fitting somehow. "Grandma," Lily's small voice cut through the awful silence. "Can I still have it?" "I'll be careful." Before I could answer, Eliza stepped between us. "Time for cake," she announced too brightly. Everyone to the party table. The moment passed. Children rushed toward the promise of sugar. Parents gratefully turned away from the uncomfortable scene, and I was left standing there, the broken necklace clutched in my wrinkled hand. My son finally approached, not quite meeting my eyes. "Mom, you know how Eliza gets about these things. She just wants the best for Lily. And I don't." My voice was steady, surprising even me. "That's not what he started," then stopped as his wife called his name. "We'll talk later," he mumbled, already turning away. We didn't talk later. I left before the cake, pleading a headache. No one tried to stop me. In my car, I sat for a long while, the broken necklace on the passenger seat beside me. I didn't cry. Not then. I was beyond tears in that strange hollow place where pain transforms into something else entirely. I drove home through a spring rain, the windshield wipers keeping time with my thoughts. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew something fundamental had changed. The woman who walked into that birthday party wasn't the same one coming home. The old Margaret might have called to apologize. For what? I couldn't say, but I would have found something. The new Margaret had different ideas altogether. When I got home, I placed the broken necklace on my dresser next to Harold's picture. "What would you do, love?" I asked his smiling face in the silver frame. My Harold had never been one to tolerate disrespect. "You'd have said something right then and there," I murmured. But I wasn't Harold. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Lily's face, when Eliza snatched away her gift. I kept feeling that sting on my cheek. I kept hearing those awful words, dollar store junk. I got up around 3 o'clock in the morning and made tea, the kind Harold always said tasted like warm dishwater, but that I found comforting. Standing at my kitchen window, watching the moon play hide and seek with the clouds, I realized I'd been hiding, too. Hiding my hurt behind politeness. Hiding my anger behind understanding. Hiding my true self behind the grandmother role I thought I was supposed to play. No more, I whispered to the moon. No more. For weeks afterward, I contemplated my options. I could continue being the doormat, the grandmother who smiles and takes whatever scraps of time and respect were thrown her way. That's what I'd been doing for years now, wasn't it? Accepting less and less, telling myself it was enough just to be in Lily's life at all, or I could cut ties completely. Some of my friends had done that with difficult children or in-laws. Not worth the heartache, my friend Doris always said about her son in California, who hadn't called in 3 years. The thought of not seeing Lily again made my chest tighten. No, I couldn't do that. I could confront them directly. Have that conversation people are always talking about these days. Set boundaries as the magazine articles advise. But what good would that do? Eliza would deny everything, twist my words, and make me out to be the interfering mother-in-law. David, my own son, would stand there staring at his shoes again. Then one evening, as I was sorting through some old papers, I came across Harold's will and the financial statements I'd tucked away years ago. I remembered how Eliza bragged about her wealthy parents and their lavish gifts. "Daddy's taking us to Hawaii this Christmas," she'd say. Or, "Mom's interior decorator is redoing Lily's bedroom. It's costing a fortune, but they insist." I also remembered something else. My late husband had left me more financially secure than my son, and his wife realized. Harold had been cautious with our finances, always preferring to save rather than show. He'd invested wisely in the stock market back in the 80s, and those investments had grown steadily over the decades. When he passed, I decided to keep things simple. The grief was overwhelming enough without having to deal with complex financial matters. So I told David that his father had left enough for me to live comfortably. And that was that. No details, no figures. David, already busy with his career and new marriage, never asked for specifics. The truth was I had been living modestly by choice. My little ranch house, my 10-year-old Buick, my careful budgeting, none of it was strictly necessary. I had accounts and investments worth nearly $500,000. Not a fortune by today's standards, but certainly more than the struggling widow Eliza seemed to think I was. I'd been setting aside money for Lily's college fund since the day she was born. By now, it had grown to almost $50,000. $50,000 that Eliza had no idea existed. $50,000 that could have bought a lot of fancy dolls and cashmere sweaters. $50,000 that I had planned to give to my granddaughter when the time came. I sat at my kitchen table that night, the financial statements spread before me, sipping the same tea I'd been drinking for years because it was familiar, not because it was the only kind I could afford. And something shifted inside me. All this time, I'd been playing the part of the modest widow, the grandmother who couldn't possibly compete with Eliza's wealthy parents. I'd accepted the role they'd assigned me, the budget-conscious granny with her simple, sweet gifts. What would happen if I showed them who I really was? If I revealed that I could have been buying Lily designer clothes and European vacations all along but chose instead to invest in her future? That night, I made my decision. Sometimes lessons need to be taught, even to our own children, even when it hurts us to teach them. I picked up the phone and called my attorney, Roger Pembleton. We'd known each other for 40 years. He drafted Harold's will, helped me with the probate, and checked in every now and then to see if I needed anything. "Roger," I said when he answered, "I'd like to make some changes to my will, and I need your advice on something else as well." "Of course, Margaret. Is everything all right?" His voice was concerned. "No," I said, surprising myself with my honesty. "But it's going to be." Over the next few days, I found myself moving with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. I visited the bank, spoke with my financial advisor, and made appointments. I had the necklace repaired at Davidson's, where Mr. Davidson Jr. tisked over the broken chain and refused to charge me for the fix. Family heirloom? He asked as he carefully reattached the clasp. I thought about it for a moment. No, I decided, but it matters all the same. And in a way, that was the truest thing I could have said. That necklace, with its small birthstone and simple inscription, had become the symbol of something important, the moment when I finally decided to stop accepting disrespect as my due. The next month, I called my financial advisor and made some changes. Martin had been managing Harold's investments for over 20 years and knew our situation well. When I told him what I wanted to do, he paused for a long moment. Are you sure about this, Margaret? It's quite a significant shift. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, I told him. After finalizing the paperwork, I took a deep breath and made another call, this time to my son. It had been weeks since the birthday party incident. He'd left one voicemail asking if I was still upset about that little misunderstanding, but otherwise silence. Mom, he sounded surprised to hear from me. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, dear. I was wondering if you, Eliza, and Lily might join me for dinner this Saturday. My treat. I named Giovanni's, the most expensive restaurant in our town, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who recite the specials from memory. Giovanni's? I could hear the surprise in his voice. Are you sure? It's pretty pricey. I'm aware of their prices, David. My voice was calm, pleasant even. I've made a reservation for 7 o'clock. I hope you can make it.
There was a pause then.
Let me check with Eliza. I'll text you. He did later that evening. They would come. Lily too, though. She'd need to be home for bedtime. I smiled at my phone.
Perfect.
I spent the next few days preparing. I had my hair done at the salon instead of trimming it myself, as usual. I bought a new dress, navy blue, with silver threading that caught the light. I even splurged on a professional manicure, something I hadn't done since Harold's funeral. The night of the dinner, I arrived early. The maitre d' showed me to a prime table by the window, where the sunset cast a golden glow across the white linen. Would Madame care for a drink while waiting? The waiter asked. A gin martini, please. Very dry. Harold's favorite. I never ordered it, usually sticking to water or sometimes a half glass of house wine. Tonight was different. When they arrived, I saw David's eyebrows rise at the sight of me. Eliza's too, though she quickly composed her face. Lily, bless her, just ran to hug me. Grandma, you look so pretty. Thank you, sweetheart. So do you. The waiter appeared with menus, and I noticed how Eliza's eyes widened slightly at the prices. David looked uncomfortable. Order whatever you like, I said, taking a sip of my martini. The lamb is excellent here. Dinner proceeded pleasantly enough. Lily chattered about school and dance class. David talked about work. Eliza was quieter than usual, watching me with a slightly puzzled expression as I ordered another cocktail and suggested the most expensive wine on the menu. After the main course, while waiting for dessert, I casually mentioned I'd been working with my lawyer on my will. Your will? David frowned. Is everything okay health-wise? I'm in perfect health, I assured him. Just getting my affairs in order. At my age, it's the responsible thing to do. Makes sense, David nodded, relaxing slightly. I took a sip of water, set the glass down carefully, and delivered the line I'd been rehearsing for days. I've decided to reconsider how my estate will be distributed. The reaction was everything I'd hoped for. My son nearly choked on his wine. What estate? Mom, you live on Social Security and Dad's pension. Eliza's face froze in that artificial smile she wore when she was processing something unexpected. Actually, no. I smiled and dabbed my lips with my napkin. Your father was quite the investor, David.
Didn't I ever mention that?
You said Dad left you comfortable, that's all. And I am comfortable. Very comfortable, in fact. I paused, enjoying this moment, perhaps more than I should have. Your father left me investments worth nearly $500,000. The silence that followed was exquisite. David's mouth actually hung open. Eliza's eyes darted between us, calculating, reassessing. $500,000? David finally whispered. But you, your house, your car? I like my house. I like my car. I don't need a mansion or a Mercedes to be happy. I stirred my coffee slowly. I've been living well within my means because that's how your father and I always lived. We believed in saving, in preparing for the future. I turned to Lily, who was happily oblivious to the tension, focused on her chocolate gelato. I especially believed in preparing for her future. Looking back at David and Eliza, I continued, I've been setting aside money for Lily's college fund, about $50,000 so far, but given recent events, I'm reconsidering whether that's the best use of my resources. The color drained from both their faces. David looked like he might be ill. Eliza's knuckles were white around her water glass. Mom, David started, his voice strained. I don't understand. Why wouldn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Would knowing I had money have made you treat me with more respect? Because if so, that's rather sad, don't you think? Before he could answer, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small velvet box. I placed the repaired silver necklace on the table. This necklace was never junk. It's sterling silver with a real aquamarine. I saved for months to buy something special for Lily. Eliza reached for it, but I gently moved it away. I've decided to keep it for now. Perhaps when Lily's older, she can decide for herself if it's worth cherishing. I rose from my chair, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. I've paid the bill, I said, and this time it was true. Lily, I love you very much. David, Eliza, I'll see myself out. I walked through that restaurant with my head high, feeling every inch my age, and not minding it one bit. In the parking lot, I took a deep breath of the cool evening air and smiled. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not just someone's mother or grandmother, but Margaret Elizabeth Wilson, a woman who had finally remembered her own worth. I wasn't the storm in the story. I felt like the break in the clouds after years of rain, sudden, unexpected, and bringing clarity to everything below. The next morning, I woke to 3 missed calls from David and a text message asking if we could talk. I didn't respond right away. Some silences need to stretch a little to create space for reflection. Instead, I made myself a proper breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee in my good china cup, and sat at my kitchen table, watching the birds at the feeder outside my window. A cardinal, bright red against the green of early summer, reminded me of Harold. He'd loved cardinals and said they were messengers from those we've lost. I see you, Harold, I whispered. I'm finally standing up for myself. It was 3 days before I called David back. 3 days of peace, of rediscovering small pleasures, reading without checking the clock, walking in the park without hurrying home to be available for a call that rarely came, sleeping without the weight of unspoken hurts pressing on my chest. Mom, his voice was cautious when he answered. I've been trying to reach you. I know, dear. I needed some time to think about what happened at the restaurant. About everything, David. About the last 5 years. There was a long pause. I could almost see him shifting uncomfortably the way he did as a teenager when confronted with something he'd rather avoid. Eliza feels terrible about what happened at the party, he finally said. Not I feel terrible, or we feel terrible. Just Eliza, always deflecting my son. Does she? I kept my voice neutral. That's between her and her conscience. What concerns me is how you've allowed me to be treated in your home. Mom, that's not fair. Let me finish, please. My voice was firm, but not unkind. I raised you to respect others. I worked 2 jobs after your father died to give you everything you needed. I never asked for gratitude, but I did expect basic courtesy, and for years now, I haven't received it. Another silence, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, more like the boy I remembered than the man he'd become. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. Didn't you? Or did you just find it easier to look away? He had no answer for that. I'm not cutting you out of my life, David. I'm not even cutting Eliza out, though God knows she's given me reason to. But things need to change. I won't be disrespected anymore. Not by her, and not by you through your silence. What do you want us to do? He asked, and I heard genuine confusion in his voice, as if the concept of treating me with dignity was so foreign he needed step-by-step instructions. I want to be treated like a person of value, I said simply. Not as an inconvenience or an embarrassment or a charity case. Just as a person worthy of basic respect. Of course you are, Mom. I never thought. Actions speak louder than words, David. Your actions, or lack thereof, have been shouting for years. We talked for nearly an hour after that. Really talked in a way we hadn't since before he met Eliza. He admitted feeling caught between his wife and me, afraid of rocking the boat at home if he stood up for me. I told him about all the small hurts I'd swallowed over the years, the gradual erosion of my place in his family. We cried a little, both of us, and by the end, something had shifted. Not healed completely. That would take time, but shifted enough to let light through the cracks. I'll talk to Eliza, he promised. Really talk to her. And I'll do better, Mom. I swear I will. I hope so, I said, because I meant what I said about reconsidering things. Not just financially, but in every way. I'm too old to waste what time I have left feeling unwelcome in my own family. After we hung up, I sat in my garden for a long while, watching bees move from flower to flower in the late afternoon sun. There was a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, exactly. The situation was still too raw for that. But something adjacent to it. Relief, perhaps, or hope. The sense that whatever happened next, I would face it as myself, not as the diminished version I'd allowed myself to become. The changes didn't happen overnight. There were awkward conversations, tentative visits, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. The first time Eliza came to my house after the restaurant confrontation, she brought an expensive bouquet and a strained apology that sounded rehearsed. I accepted both with grace, but made it clear that flowers weren't what I wanted. Respect was important, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Intentions and impact are different things, I replied, and the impact has been painful for a very long time. She nodded, uncomfortable with my directness, but unable to deny it. David says you've been putting money aside for Lily's college. Of course, that would be her focus. Yes, because I believe in her future. That's very generous of you. It's not about generosity, Eliza. It's about love. The same love that made me save for months to buy her a silver necklace that ended up thrown in my face. She flinched at that, color rising in her cheeks. I shouldn't have done that. I don't know why I reacted that way. Don't you? I asked quietly. Because I think you do. I think you've been determined to see me as less than from the beginning, less wealthy, less sophisticated, less important than your own parents. And you've made sure Lily sees me that way, too. Tears welled in her eyes, surprising both of us. My parents always made everything about money, she whispered. How much things cost, where they came from, what brand they were. Nothing was ever good enough unless it had the right label, the right price tag. I swore I wouldn't be like that. But patterns run deep. I finished for her. I understand that better than you might think. We talked for over 2 hours that day. Really talked in a way we never had before. About her childhood in the shadow of perfectionist parents. About my fears of becoming irrelevant as I aged. About Lily and what we both wanted for her. We didn't resolve everything. Some wounds were too deep for that. But we found common ground we hadn't known existed. As she was leaving, she paused at the door. The necklace, she said hesitantly. The one for Lily? Do you still have it? I nodded. I do. Could she? Would it be all right if she wore it to her dance recital next month? She asks about it sometimes. Something warm unfurled in my chest. I think that would be lovely. The recital was on a Saturday afternoon in late June. I sat between David and Eliza, the three of us in a row of folding chairs in the community center auditorium. On stage, Lily twirled in her tutu, the silver heart necklace catching the spotlight as she moved. She wasn't the most graceful dancer in her class, but to me, she was perfect. Her face serious with concentration, her arms reaching towards something only she could see. "She's beautiful," I whispered, not really to anyone. "She is," Eliza agreed. And for once, there was no edge to her voice, no hidden comparison or criticism, just shared pride in the child we both loved. After the performance, Lily ran to us, still in her costume, face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me, Grandma? Did you see my spins?" "I saw everyone," I assured her, bending to hug her close. "You were magnificent." She beamed, then touched the necklace at her throat. "Mommy said, 'This is special because you picked it just for me.'" I glanced at Eliza, surprised. She gave a small nod, almost shy. "That's right," I told Lily. "Because you're special to me." "Can we get ice cream?" she asked, already moving on as children do. Mommy said, "Maybe if it's okay with you." "Ice cream sounds perfect," I said and took her small hand in mine. As we walked to the car, David fell into step beside me. "This is nice," he said quietly. "The four of us together like this." "Yes," I agreed.
It is.
"I'm sorry it took so long," he added. "And that it took what happened to get here." I squeezed his arm gently. "Sometimes we need a shock to see clearly." "Are you still changing your will?" he asked, a hint of his old avoidance in the question. I laughed softly. "That's still what you're worried about." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "No, not really. I want you to know that's not why things are different now, isn't it though?" "At least partly." I wasn't angry asking this, just honest. "Would you have had that talk with Eliza if money wasn't involved?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Maybe not right away," he admitted finally. "But I'd like to think I would have eventually." The necklace incident. It opened my eyes to things I'd been ignoring. "Then that's enough," I said. "We can't change the past. We can only decide what happens next." What happened next was a slow rebuilding. Weekly dinners at my house, where Eliza gradually relaxed enough to accept my cooking without rearranging the table settings afterward. Sunday afternoon visits where David and I worked in my garden while Lily and Eliza baked cookies in the kitchen. Small steps, imperfect ones, but steps nonetheless. There were still moments of tension. Old habits don't disappear overnight. Sometimes Eliza would make a comment about my quaint decorating style or suggest that her mother's way of doing something was better. But now, instead of swallowing my hurt, I would say calmly, "That comment feels dismissive, Eliza." And instead of ignoring it, David would back me up. "Mom's house is beautiful just as it is." Small victories, but meaningful ones. The necklace incident had been painful, humiliating even. But like so many difficult moments in life, it had also been clarifying. Sometimes it takes a shock to the system to see what's been in front of us all along, both the problems and the possibilities. I wasn't the storm in the story. I felt like the break in the clouds after years of rain, sudden, unexpected, and bringing clarity to everything below. At 68, I had finally learned that respect isn't something you earn through perfect behavior or financial status. It's something you claim by valuing yourself enough to walk away when it's withheld. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people who matter find their way back to you, changed by your absence, ready to begin again with clearer eyes and more open hearts. The silver necklace still hangs around Lily's neck most days. Not because it's expensive or impressive, but because it carries a story now. Our story. A story of hurt and healing, of boundaries drawn and bridges built. A story still being written one day, at a time with all the messy, beautiful complexity that family entails. And that, more than any amount of money or status, is the true inheritance I hope to leave behind.